Traveling between the Hawaiian Islands has always been more than just a simple necessity. It was a symbol of unity, pride, and innovation in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And it was in this setting that Aloha Airlines was born, an airline that, for decades, represented the heart and soul of Hawaii. For the residents of the islands, Aloha Airlines was more than just an air company. It was a piece of their own local identity. On the American mainland, however, few people even knew it existed, except for those who had traveled to Hawaii or had heard about it because of the tragic accident that would make it known around the world. Aloha Airlines carried on its wings the spirit of hospitality and the pride of a people who saw aviation as a bridge connecting cultures and families. Its short flights, warm service, and a name that embodied the essence of the Aloha spirit turned it into a regional symbol of trust and belonging. But beneath that strong image were cracks that few noticed until it was too late. Between the air accident of Flight 243 in 1988, financial crises, and fierce competition in the continental market, the airline that once dominated the skies of the Pacific began to face storms both inside and out. What had once been Hawaiian pride turned into a harsh lesson about management, vulnerability, and the relentless changes of the American aviation industry. In this video, you will discover the true story of Aloha Airlines, from its foundation and golden years to its inevitable collapse. A story that blends emotion, tragedy, and the complex gears of an empire that crumbled under the weight of its own limits. Fasten your seatbelts and get ready to understand how a company loved by an entire state ended up becoming a bitter reminder of how success can be as fragile as the calmest flight. Had you ever heard about Aloha Airlines before this accident, or was this the first time you discovered this forgotten chapter of American aviation history? The story of Aloha Airlines begins in 1946, right after the end of World War II, when Hawaii was still not a state of the United States. Before the creation of Aloha Airlines in 1946, inter-island air transportation was essential but very limited, and only a few companies dared to operate with regular schedules. One of those companies was Hawaiian Airlines, which practically dominated the market, making ticket prices extremely high for local residents. Besides that, Hawaiians had few alternatives: ships that took hours or even days to carry passengers and cargo, or small charter companies whose planes had no fixed schedules or defined routes. Each flight was personalized, hired by groups, tourists, or companies that needed to travel between the islands. One of these charter companies was Trans-Pacific Airlines, created by Rudy Tong, a visionary Hawaiian entrepreneur of Chinese descent who was determined to transform aviation in the archipelago. Founded in 1946, right after the war, the company emerged to compete with Hawaiian Airlines, which until then had almost a total monopoly on inter-island flights. Tong had a bold idea: to make air travel affordable for local residents, not just for wealthy tourists or American military personnel. To achieve this, he purchased Douglas DC-3 aircraft that were military surplus from the war, durable but worn planes, and adapted them with limited resources, installing simple rows of seats and hand-painting the company's name on their fuselages. He also relied on Hawaiian hospitality as a unique feature, incorporating the local culture into every detail. During flights, flight attendants wore floral dresses, played the ukulele, and performed hula dances, turning each journey into a one-of-a-kind experience. It was the first time an airline ever offered live entertainment on board. The strategy worked. Even without regular scheduled flights at first, Trans-Pacific Airlines grew quickly and became a strong competitor, breaking the monopoly of Hawaiian Airlines. Over time, the company established itself by offering the much-needed inter-island service at affordable prices. In 1949, the company received its provisional certificate to operate as a regular airline. Throughout the 1950s, it began investing in promotional fares, transporting both local residents and tourists, especially Japanese visitors, whose numbers were increasing rapidly. The acceptance was immediate. Both Hawaiians and tourists loved the company, which soon became affectionately known as the People's Airline, or simply Aloha Airline. The nickname became so popular that in 1950, with a fleet of 5 Douglas DC-3 aircraft, the company officially adopted the abbreviation TPA, standing for the Aloha Airline. In 1958, after the arrival of new investors, the name was finally changed for good to Aloha Airlines. During the 1960s and 1970s, Aloha Airlines experienced the peak of its expansion. In 1960, the company went public on the stock exchange, a bold move that marked the beginning of a new era. Shortly after, the first jet of its fleet arrived, a modern, elegant, and quiet aircraft powered by Rolls-Royce engines. The announcement caused great excitement across Hawaii. For the first time, inter-island flights would be operated with jet aircraft, fast, safe, and a true symbol of modernity. It was the beginning of the golden age of aviation in the islands. Aloha Airlines wanted to go even further. The company planned to become a fully jet-powered airline, investing in new models that promised greater speed and efficiency. But what seemed like an inevitable step forward soon turned into a fierce battle for control of the Hawaiian skies. Hawaiian Airlines, its biggest rival, was also modernizing its fleet and increasing flight frequencies. In a short time, there were more available seats than passengers willing to fill them. Competition became ruthless. The two companies engaged in a silent war over fares, schedules, and routes, and soon revenues began to decline. In 1970, there was even talk of a merger between the two airlines, a desperate attempt to prevent both from going bankrupt. But the deal never materialized. Shortly after, the United States government approved the deregulation of the airline industry, opening the door to new, low-cost carriers. Smaller companies began operating between the islands, offering fares that Aloha Airlines simply could not match. The new reality came alongside a national economic crisis. Fuel prices soared, tourism declined, and operating costs skyrocketed. Hawaiian Airlines, being larger and financially stronger, managed to endure. Aloha Airlines, more dependent on local passengers, began to feel the impact intensely. The company that for years had symbolized Hawaiian progress was now struggling to survive, facing a battle that became increasingly difficult and dangerous. By 1982, Aloha Airlines was going through one of the most difficult financial periods in its history. The company reported significant losses, reaching nearly $1 million in December of that year alone, a heavy blow for a relatively small airline operating only within the Hawaiian Islands. Searching for a way out of the crisis, management decided to take bold steps. It launched a frequent flyer program to build passenger loyalty and announced an ambitious expansion plan intended to take the brand beyond the archipelago. To achieve this, Aloha leased a modern wide-body jet, the Douglas DC-10, and named the new operation Aloha Pacific. With it, the company opened long-distance international routes, connecting Hawaii to destinations such as Guam and Taipei, hoping to compete with major airlines from the U.S. mainland and the Pacific. However, the plan proved far too risky. Operating costs were high, and competition was relentless. Before long, the expansion was halted, and Aloha Airlines was forced to completely change direction. The airline then began focusing on a niche service, more refined, aimed at frequent inter-island travelers. At the same time, it created a nighttime cargo division, which would soon become one of the most profitable areas of its operations in the years that followed. In 1986, Aloha Airlines found itself in a delicate situation. A private equity firm based in Dallas, Texas, had shown strong interest in purchasing the Hawaiian Airline. This investment company intended to take control of Aloha Airlines, restructure its operations, and possibly change its identity to make it more profitable. However, within Aloha, the proposal was seen as a direct threat to the company's local autonomy and to the values it represented for the Hawaiian people. Fearing that an acquisition by mainland investors would destroy the regional and family-oriented character of the airline, Aloha's leadership decided to act quickly. In a bold and strategic move, the board approved a plan to take the company private again, buying back the shares that were available on the market. This maneuver prevented the Texas firm from completing the purchase and avoided what would have been a hostile takeover when a company is taken over by force without the consent of its management. Thanks to that decision, Aloha Airlines managed to preserve its independence and continue as an essentially Hawaiian company, owned and operated by people from the islands themselves. This move reinforced its commitment to the local community and ensured that, at least for a while longer, the Hawaiian spirit remained at the controls of its wings. Even under constant pressure, Aloha continued to expand cautiously. It began operating flights to Christmas Island and acquired another small airline, later renamed Aloha Island Air, strengthening its regional presence. However, in 1988, a tragic and unexpected event would forever mark the name Aloha Airlines, deeply shaking its reputation and the company's future. On the afternoon of April 28, 1988, a day that would remain forever in the history of American aviation, Aloha Airlines Flight 243 took off on what seemed to be an ordinary route. The short flight between Hilo and Honolulu lasted about 35 minutes and was operated daily without major incidents. That afternoon, 95 people were on board the Boeing 737-200, including passengers and crew, embarking on yet another routine journey under the blue Pacific sky. Just a few minutes after takeoff, everything appeared normal. The aircraft reached its cruising altitude, around 24,000 feet, when a deafening bang and a powerful rush of wind filled the cabin. Within seconds, a large section of the upper fuselage tore away, ripping off the airplane's roof and exposing passengers directly to the open sky at deadly speed and altitude. What had occurred was an explosive decompression caused by the structural weakening of the metal, the result of years of wear, fatigue, and corrosion due to Hawaii's marine climate and the airline's constant short flights. Despite the chaos, the crew remained calm. Captain Robert Schornsheimer and First Officer Madeline Tompkins immediately began an emergency descent, attempting to bring the aircraft to Kahului Airport on the island of Maui, the closest point for an emergency landing. Even with the left engine failing, both the vertical and horizontal stabilizers damaged, and no guarantee that the landing gear was locked, they managed to perform a heroic landing. The scene after landing was one of sheer devastation. 65 people were injured, 8 of them seriously. All the surviving passengers had their seatbelts fastened at the time of the decompression, which prevented an even greater tragedy. Unfortunately, Chief Flight Attendant Clarabelle Lansing, a veteran with 37 years of service at Aloha Airlines, was standing in the first-class cabin when the roof tore open. She was instantly sucked out of the plane and vanished into the sky. Her body was never found. The accident quickly made headlines around the world, placing Aloha Airlines at the center of international media attention. Experts describe the event as one of the most extraordinary and unbelievable incidents in the history of commercial aviation, not only because of the severity of the structural failure, but also because of the incredible feat of the crew who managed to land a nearly destroyed aircraft. For many, the outcome was nothing short of an aerial miracle. After the rescue and initial investigations, the airplane was declared a total loss, revealing a troubling reality. It was discovered that Aloha Airlines operated 2 of the Boeing 737 aircraft with the highest number of flight cycles in the world, meaning planes that took off and landed countless times each day on short inter-island routes. This intense routine, combined with constant exposure to the salty, humid Pacific air, had accelerated the process of corrosion and metal fatigue, factors that together led to the catastrophic fuselage rupture. Aloha Airlines faced heavy criticism from both authorities and the press, particularly regarding maintenance and inspection failures that had failed to detect the aircraft's structural deterioration. Despite this challenging scenario, the airline surprisingly managed to maintain its financial stability. However, that same year, Aloha suffered an emotional and symbolic blow with the death of its founder, Rudy Tong, who passed away on August 8, 1988, at the age of 83 in Honolulu, Hawaii. Tong's passing marked the end of an era, But leadership quickly transitioned to Hung Wo-ching, who had already been serving as chief executive officer of Aloha Airlines since 1958 and had extensive experience managing the company. Even in the face of tragedy and intense public pressure, the airline managed to close the year with positive results. Aloha Airlines posted an operating profit and revenue of $124.7 million, demonstrating that, despite the challenges, the trust of Hawaiians in the company remained strong, and that the airline still managed to stand as a pillar of inter-island air transportation. In 1990, Aloha Airlines reached an important milestone by surpassing Hawaiian Airlines in market share on inter-island flights, showing that the company was still deeply loved by the local public. In the early 2000s, Aloha underwent a significant fleet upgrade, receiving the modern Boeing 737-700, aircraft capable of flying longer distances over the ocean safely and efficiently. With a new paint scheme and updated design, the airline expanded its operations to include direct flights to the U.S. mainland, starting with Oakland, California, and later adding destinations such as Sacramento, Las Vegas, San Diego, Burbank, and even Vancouver, Canada. Despite operating around 120 daily flights and showing growth, the airline began to face financial challenges again. After the September 11, 2001 attacks, the United States airline industry suffered a sharp decline, especially in tourism, which heavily impacted Hawaii. Both Aloha Airlines and Hawaiian Airlines felt the economic pressure and resumed negotiations for a possible merger, which would have created a company called Aloha Holdings. However, the deal never materialized, and both airlines had to rely on government loans to continue operating. Aloha Airlines received $7.7 million. To further reduce costs, Aloha negotiated a 10% pay cut with its employees, a measure that saved nearly $40 million by 2005, helping the airline navigate a delicate financial period and try to remain competitive in a challenging market. It became increasingly clear that Aloha Airlines' financial situation was critical. Even after receiving a new $45 million government loan, the airline could not balance its accounts. Rising aviation fuel costs, combined with panic caused by a respiratory epidemic that affected tourism in Hawaii that year, made the financial burden simply unsustainable. With quarterly losses mounting alarmingly, Aloha had no choice. On December 30, 2004, the airline filed for bankruptcy, following the same fate as its competitor, Hawaiian Airlines, which had done the same a year earlier. The company then laid out a rapid reorganization plan aimed at emerging from bankruptcy by the summer of 2006. To survive, it took drastic measures, cutting premium services, laying off employees, and renegotiating aircraft lease contracts, streamlining operations, and trying to become more competitive in a highly volatile industry. Despite securing private financing and presenting optimistic projections to the public, Aloha still faced enormous challenges. The airline's final endurance was tested when a small, low-cost carrier called Go began inter-island operations, offering extremely low fares. This aggressive competition triggered a price war that directly impacted Aloha, which had until then only reduced fares to compete with Hawaiian Airlines. The effect was devastating. In 2006, the airline posted over $40 million in losses. The situation worsened even further with the continuous rise in aviation fuel prices, combined with the effects of the real estate crisis in the United States, which directly impacted Hawaii's economy and tourism. Unable to remain competitive, Aloha Airlines filed for bankruptcy again on March 20, 2008. Although there were interested investors in advanced purchase negotiations, the rising operating costs caused many to withdraw. After 61 years of history, Aloha Airlines faced its final outcome. In just 10 days, without new financing and with no hope of recovery, the company announced on March 31, 2008, the complete cessation of its passenger transport operations. For Hawaiians, that day marked the end of an era. Aloha was more than just an airline. It was a constant presence in the archipelago's skies, a symbol of the Aloha spirit and everyday island life. With the closure, the company entered liquidation.
All of its assets were put up for auction in an attempt to recover some capital. But to the dismay of loyal passengers and especially employees, there was little interest in purchasing the passenger division. It was clear that Aloha Airlines, loved by generations, had truly come to an end. The only part that survived was the cargo and contract services division, acquired by Salt Chuck Logistics, based in Seattle. This gave rise to Aloha Air Cargo, which began operations in May 2008 and remains active today, keeping the brand's legacy alive in a limited way. The name Aloha also became a source of controversy. Mesa Airlines, owner of the airline Go, one of Aloha's main competitors, attempted to acquire the rights to the brand to rename its own company. However, the initiative sparked outrage among former Aloha employees who organized protests against the sale. Due to this reaction and pressure on the bankruptcy process, the deal was blocked by the responsible judge.
Later in 2011, the Aloha Airlines name was sold to a company in Los Angeles for approximately $1.5 million. Since then, however, the brand has remained inactive, without any significant commercial operation or use. The end of Aloha Airlines left a deep emotional gap. Thousands of employees lost their jobs, loyal passengers felt the absence of the airline, and some of the historic aircraft remain rusting in continental deserts, silent witnesses to a legacy that ended too soon. Ironically, the airline that was created to bring more competition and efficiency to the inter-island market ended up being defeated by even fiercer competition, rising operational costs, and global events beyond its control. The market was too small for two major airlines, and even smaller for them while facing pressure from low-cost carriers. While Hawaiian Airlines survived, Aloha Airlines lives on only in the memory of those who flew on its aircraft and felt, with every takeoff and landing, the unique spirit of Hawaii. No matter what the outside world recorded about the company, for the Hawaiian people, Aloha Airlines will always be remembered as a legend of the archipelago's skies, a symbol of courage, passion, and local culture.